Great. Well, before I start, I kind of want to get a poll from everyone. So feel free to either enter it in the chat. Want to get a feel for, do we have Scrum Masters already in the group? And your experience, are you just starting off? Have you been a Scrum Master for a while? Do you have a different accountability or role? So just want to get a feel for the team, how much you already know of the role. So feel free to shout it out, or you can go ahead and enter it in the chat as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Fatima, and so Scrum is a very new venture for me. I'm currently in a Scrum Master internship from the Job Hackers, and so I've learned a vast amounts of knowledge when it comes to the Scrum practice, the Scrum framework, and I've just loved it so much. And even today, our facilitator is like dropping all these. She's like, oh, telling me about the artifacts. I'm like, oh, wow, this is what. And so it's very exciting for me now. She also tells me, she's like, if you're a mom, you're already a Scrum Master because all of these daily plannings you have to do and I find myself using it so much more and more now in my daily lives. If my husband is using it with his workers at work, and he's like, I made him take the class forcefully, and so he's obsessed with it now. So that's where I am. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. So I see some coaches. I see CSMs, a couple of them, some with a lot of experience, product owner, but you still act like a Scrum Master, have to do both roles, new to Scrum. All right. So got a couple of Scrum Masters. I want to leverage your knowledge as well. So I'm going to share, but I also want to leverage the knowledge we have within this group so that we can be able to leverage and get some ideas as well. All right. So you can see my screen. You see Scrum Master there. Perfect.
Yep.
So I'm going to really base off a lot of my talks related to the Scrum Guide. So we talk in the Scrum Guide that a Scrum Master, it's an accountability, that they're the guide to Scrum. So as a matter of fact, I was just teaching a certified Scrum Master class. I was co-training the past 2 days. So it's kind of ironic that this led right into it from a Scrum Master do's and don'ts. And one of the interesting things that was shared is that the Scrum Master is the only class where there's a test. The others, as of right now, you're taking the class and you're certified. So I even asked the question, like, why is that, but really, the Scrum Master really needs to understand the Scrum Guide, and then they're helping to train and educate others. So they're helping the developers, they're helping the product owner, they're serving them and the organization. So I realized why we have a test, right? Because they really need to know it inside and out. And so therefore, the Scrum Master, when you get the certification, you have to go through a test. So they really need to know the Scrum framework and be able to share that with others and help mentor and coach others as well. So they're serving the developers, they're facilitating the removal of impediments, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. They're protecting the team, and they're serving the product owner and the organization. They're also acting as a change agent. So Scrum may be new to an organization. And in the old Scrum Guide, they used to say servant leader. In the new Scrum Guide, in the 2020 version, they say it's a leader. The Scrum Master has to do a lot of influencing, especially when it comes to the team. The team doesn't normally report into the Scrum Master from a reporting structure. So they really have to use their influencing skills with their team, with their product owner, with their developers. And I just want to clarify, if you don't know developers, right, we're not talking about just programmers, could be QA members, BAs, UI, UX, it could be anyone who's building and developing this product. So when we say developers, I just want to clarify that it could be all those skills that we're bringing into the team. And so what I'm going to do is have you do an exercise. And I'm going to share this screen with you for a second of a mural exercise we're going to do. I'll walk you through mural in a minute. And we have 2 sections. So we have a section up top, which is service to the developers, service to the product owner, and service to the organization. I'm going to have you break out into groups, and you're going to go through service to the developers. What are things you should do as a Scrum Master? And what are things you shouldn't do or don't do to serve the developers? And then same thing for the product owner as well as the organization. So we're going to take 10 minutes to do that, and we're just going to focus on that. Later on, we're going to do the bottom section, but right now I just want you to really focus on the top area of the service area. Questions on the activity? All right.
Want me to drop the links into the chat?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
All right. So momentarily, we'll send you off to breakout rooms. You'll either be in room 1, 2, 3, or 4. And in the chat, you'll find the links for the boards that correspond to each room. So Sheena, let me know when you're ready to send them off.
Yeah, we are good to go. We will see you in 10 minutes. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Hope you had a good exercise. We're going to walk through a little bit more in detail now. So let's talk about service to the developers, right? I have to tell you a funny story. When I was in high school, this is a while back, I was trying to figure out what I was going to get into. My mom's like, you should get into computers. That's the way to go. You know, that's where all the jobs are and such. And I was like, Mom. And at that time, you know, programmers, developers was all I knew. They sat in front of a computer all day long. And I'm like, Mom, do you even know me? Like, I'm just not that kind of techie person, right? And one of the questions that I get often in a lot of the classes are, do you have to be a technical person to be a Scrum Master? And I say the Scrum Master is really more about the soft skills, really looking at the team, trying to understand, having one-on-ones with them. If you have quiet people on the team, bringing them out, getting them to speak up a little bit more, making sure their voice is heard. You know, if you have someone who's dominant in the group, making sure that there's equal conversation going on, like say in a retrospective and such. So really caring and thinking about the team. So that's your service to the developers. And as I'm sure many of you have, so I'm going to go to Team 1's mural. And can I get Team 1 to maybe bring out one thing that you felt like that's a do? Like, what should a Scrum Master do? Team 1?
Always be a cheerleader for your team.
Okay, great. And I see protect the team here. Does anyone want to expand upon that a little bit? I'll give you an example. So when I was working with a group before they turned into a Scrum team, there were people tapping into the team on a regular basis. So they would be working on a project, and then someone would say, hey, I have this issue, or I have a ticket. Their managers, their leaders, as well as just other people in the business area. When we switched over to a Scrum manner and they committed to something within the sprint, people would still continue to tap into them. And the developers, they were used to always saying yes. So again, developers meaning the developers, QA, others, they were naturally just said yes, right? And so as a Scrum Master, you have to protect the team and have that conversation with the team. And sometimes this is where you have the conversation with the organization as well. And that's where you're serving the organization to help everyone understand you've committed to this in the sprint planning, say 10 product backlog items as a team. And if something comes up, helping educate the organization that they have to go to the product owner and get that prioritized. They can't keep tapping into the developers because they're committed to that 10 product backlog items in my example. So that's a good way that as a Scrum Master, you have to protect the team because they're going to have a lot of distractions and they are committed to what they've committed to in the sprint. All right. Any others, whether it's team one or any others, what are some other things as a Scrum Master that you should do? For the developers, for the team.
Remove the impediment or the blocker for them.
Right. So can you give me an example? Have you had one?
Well,
Yeah.
I've had one. I'm currently a Scrum Master for a group of students at a university, and they're working on a gaming project. I've had to work with the team to remove impediments. When the impediments they're currently facing is not understanding the real scope of the project. So to be able to deliver the increment. So I've worked with the product owner to be able to define what the team needs to do. So, and that has helped. And then moving on to almost finishing the project.
Wonderful. So that's great. I'm glad you led to that. There are times where you'll need, again, this is where really working with the team on one-on-one, understanding where their needs are. So there are times there might be something that they share with you, and then you'll need to share that with a product owner. You want to bring the team together and have them share that, but sometimes, again, we have timid people, we have quiet people, then that's where you would service the product owner. Bring light to something that, you know, maybe the product backlog item or the user story needs a little bit more detail. And maybe some of the team members have shared that with you, and then you're sharing that, and that's how you would service, one way that you would service the product owner. Any impediments maybe outside of the team that they can't resolve? There might be user access, or there may be a process or a dependency that they're relying on outside of the team. And so there might be times where you need to work with the organization and try to kind of maybe, if the team's working in a 2-week sprint and they need something outside of the team, whether it's a dependency to another team, maybe it's something access related, and that process may take a while and they may not be working in a Scrum manner. So therefore, sometimes you have to work with the organization, other parts, to help them understand that this team needs something. They're working in my example, a 2-week sprint, and that, you know, maybe that's not a change right away, but working with the organization to maybe see what are ways that we could help assist the team so that they can continue to deliver frequently and remove some of those larger impediments from an organizational perspective. All right. Can someone give me examples of service to the product owner?
Helping maintain a good backlog, product backlog.
Right. So I've had a product owner where we had a distributed team. So we have people from all over globally. And originally when I were with the team, we would go through refinement, and they really, like, there wasn't a lot. People were trying to understand what that product backlog item or user story was. And they needed time to process. So I worked with the product owner. I said, hey, you know, can we, before refinement, send out the product backlog items or the user stories 2-3 days in advance and share it, let them know what we're going to cover in refinement. And that gave the time for the team to get a chance to read through it, come up with questions, get time to process it. So when we were in refinement, they had a chance to really ask the questions, make sure they understood it. Because a lot of times when we're bringing up a product backlog item or user story, the product owner is doing that. Everyone's trying to read through it. We're trying to get through, you know, multiple product backlog items, and they really need time to just process it. So that's one way that maybe you want to suggest to the product owner, hey, can we maybe identify what we're going to go over in refinement early for the team so they have time. Again, it doesn't have to be a distributed team, but it's just helpful for people to have time to review, come with questions, and be prepared. And same thing, I've had conversations with product owners where we didn't have enough stories refined. So especially new product owners, not really knowing that, oh, we need kind of a runway of product backlog items that need to be refined. So when the team is ready to pull them in, that they're good to go. The idea is that when we start a sprint, we're ready to execute, right? We're still not trying to figure out what's happening in the story, so or the product backlog item. So we want to make sure, you know, you're helping encourage the product owner that they're doing that refinement, and maybe the frequency might need to increase depending on what's going on with the team. All right. And then service to the organization. Can I get a volunteer to share? You know, what do you see that a Scrum Master can do to serve the organization?
I was going to say plan and advise Scrum implementation or implementations.
Yeah, it's a new change for the organization. They might have been used to certain things, certain measurements, metrics. I've had where stakeholders, you know, traditional waterfall projects, they are used to just giving out their requirements early and then going back to doing their regular jobs, right? So we moved to Scrum, and the stakeholders are like, why are you coming to me every 2 weeks? So helping train and educate stakeholders, maybe with the product owner, having this conversation when you're starting off with a team, sharing with the stakeholders, we're going to come to you on a regular basis and go through these product backlog items with you. We're going to need details on a regular basis. We need you in the sprint review. Having that conversation with the stakeholders is really important. So that's one way within servicing the organization that the Scrum Master will be really helpful. It's a big change, so being the change agent, sometimes you will have to train the organization. I've had where I now do lunch and learns once a month. You don't have to be part of a Scrum team, but a lot of times other teams are interacting with the Scrum team. They're trying to understand what's the Scrum team and why are they working in 2 weeks and things along that line. So we have some lunch and learns, and we have different topics. And sometimes we have people speak to their experience, and it gives others an opportunity and insight to it that even if they're not on that team, they get exposure to it. So if something is asked of them, now they're aware, oh, okay, this team's on a 2-week sprint. I probably have to get something to them fairly quickly. All right, we did the do's. What about the don'ts? What are something from a service to the developers as a Scrum Master? What shouldn't you do? Any volunteers for that?
Manage or command?
Right. So you're being a servant leader, you're being a leader. The whole idea is they're empowered, they're motivated, and you're helping them, and you're mentoring and coaching them along. So there are times where there might be conflict within the team. Bringing them together, having them work it out, those are things that you would do as a Scrum Master. So you don't want to tell them what to do, you want them to come to that. So you're coaching them along to get them to come up with the ideas. Impediments, can they resolve that within the team before you have to address it, right? Getting them to maybe solve for each other before, if they truly can't within the team, then that's where you jump in, but trying to get them to try to do that. What about service to the product owner? What shouldn't you do as a Scrum Master?
Write stories.
Right, stories, exactly. So helping the product owner, again, we may have some fairly new product owners. I've given articles or meetups and advice to product owners, different styles of writing product backlog items. You know, there's so many different formats out there, giving them those ideas that they may not be aware of. A lot of times there's meetups about what the role of a product owner is. So I share that with my product owners to make sure that they're familiar with it if they're interested in learning more from outside. So that's ways that you can help support them and not do that work. And then what are things as a Scrum Master you should not do for the organization, or what is something from an organizational perspective?
Prioritize the backlog.
So how about the larger organization? So we said that, you know, there's a lot of change that's going on. They're not familiar with Scrum maybe. So, you know, so you want to be supportive and you want to be a change agent. So what's something that from an organizational level for you as a Scrum Master?
I would say to be too pushy or stern with maybe the suggestions you're bringing. I think it's important to, when you join an organization, find out how they're working, their current process, and see how best you can improve rather than cracking down the whip, because you're going to face a lot of pushback from not only the organization, but from the teams. So that would be, yeah.
Exactly. I joined an organization and, you know, originally some of my learnings, I was providing training and such, and then I had, it was actually a developer, but I'm sure other people in the organization felt this way. They're like, you're just the flavor of the month or the year in this organization. You know, one year we're on this kick and next year we're on that kick. So you're just going to go away at some point is kind of the attitude that I got. And from an organizational perspective, right? And it made me realize like the way I approach it needs to be different. So for me, I need to realize where they were coming from. So the way I trained for that organization was, you know, this is how you used to do your job as in this particular role. And this is how it would change in the Scrum framework. And then it helped them understand a little bit better. And so it helped them realize like, I have focus now, you know, I'm not working on 20 different projects. This is the only area of focus that it's actually a relief for me. So it's helping them understand that transition from what you used to do and how it will be different in the new Scrum world for them, for that particular team. So from an organizational perspective, be patient. You know, sometimes you'll have to repeat things. Sometimes you'll have to provide training a couple of times. There are times where you might have to reinforce training with your teams as well. So as your team progresses, they might need refreshers on certain portions. Other times, like I've had to have refreshers on refinement with the team. We had the initial training, we went through, kind of have to reinforce it again. So those are ways that not only are you serving, but you're also wearing these different hats. So the Scrum Master is a facilitator. Most of you probably know, how are you a facilitator as a Scrum Master? When are you facilitating?
Sprint ceremonies.
Right. So for the Scrum events, you're a facilitator for most of them. So that's one hat that you wear as a Scrum Master. But other times you might be a trainer, and at different times you're wearing these hats. So a trainer, so you may be a trainer for the developers, the team itself, the Scrum team, for the product owner. So there are times where you may be teaching certain areas or reinforcing, again, as well as the organization. It might be a lunch and learn, it might be something just training in general related to the Scrum framework. Now, you could also be wearing as a Scrum Master a mentor hat and a coach hat. Does anybody know the difference between a mentor and a coach?
I would say that as a mentor, you're helping somebody along, but you're not necessarily directing them to do things. And as a coach, you're working on goals sometimes that are directed towards them, or that it's leaning in on a specific thing that you're trying to do.
So
I don't know, that's not very clear.
No, it's fine. I'm going to swap it out the other way around. So a mentor, so I mentioned you're working with your team, you'll have some one-on-ones, and you're directing them, especially if they're starting off new, you want to have one-on-ones and help them and give them advice. On the coaching side, they may know the information, you're just asking them, you're coaching them along, you're getting them to come up with the solution. The mentor, you're directing them, you're telling them exactly what to do. Where in the coach, you're bringing up questions to them, getting them to think, and having them come to that solution themselves. So you're wearing that hat. Again, sometimes you're doing that with the product owner, sometimes you're doing that with the developers. And then again, as a coach, you might be doing that for all three, for the organization as well as the Scrum team. There's a lot of times where where the leaders also need it. So you might be training the leaders. They really need to understand, how is this changing? How do I lead these teams? We're moving to this effort, but where does my role fit in? So again, at an organizational level, you might be training or coaching leaders. I had a situation where the leader, same thing, would tap into the developers and say, hey, I need you to work on this other thing. So working with the leaders and saying, hey, they committed to this. If we need something, we have to work with the product owner, add that to the backlog and get that prioritized. So again, it's a big change for the organization, for the leaders, other stakeholders. And so we're wearing these hats as Scrum Masters. So you may be a facilitator at some point, and many times people think it's just a facilitator role, but really you're looking at it from a trainer and from a mentor and a coach. That people skills is so key in the Scrum Master role. And a lot of times people are asked, can a Scrum Master support multiple teams? So one, I'll tell you, I had to support 4 teams and it was a lot. I really were going through the motion rather than really knowing my team. And I highly say, do not do that. You want to be able to have the team think of ways to improve. Watching them through the sprint and saying, hey, we were really stuck on this story. It took us a while. What got in our way? In the retros, bringing data. We committed to 10 product backlog items. We only got 5 done. What got in our way? Having them think about it, prompting them, and then that's where they need to come up with that. Like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this reason we had to depend on another team, and that really, we couldn't get it done for that reason. We didn't identify that dependency when we went through a refinement. Those are the conversations you want the team to bring up and solve for within the team. So I hope you enjoyed and learned some tidbits, had a chance to meet and interact with others as well. So that is the Scrum Master. They serve the developers, the product owner, the organization. They have different core competencies. They wear different hats, as they say, as a trainer, as a facilitator, as a mentor, and as a coach. All right. Any questions? All right, Chris.
Good
Thank
stuff,
you.
Sheena. Thank